All right, y'all, what's up? We're going to finish up chapter 4 and then head on into chapter 5 of Worthy by Jada Pinkett Smith. Okay, and that was a second that I decided I needed even more control over my life. Whatever money he took and clothes he stole, I could get back. No problem. I thought, I'm not going to trip. It was this incident that not only justified why I sold drugs, but ramped it up. Why? Because I wanted out. I didn't want to be a part of this, but I couldn't abandon my mother. That's a hell of a conflict. I only vaguely recall how I started slinging dope. I do remember that there was a lot of hustlers at the skating rink, and I started making connections there with this low-level dudes whose egos were waiting to be stroked. I caught my first fish on some I need a mentor-ish. Someone to show me the ropes because I needed to make some money. At first, M, we'll call him M, asked if I wanted to make a drop for him. I told him, nah, you should give me something on the arm. And if I do right by it, we'll take it from there. I knew I didn't want to be a mule. I didn't want to put myself in a position where a dude had his boot on my neck. Mules never called the shots. I wanted to call shots. M smirked and stared at me for a minute. I don't think he took me seriously, but he wanted to humor me and himself. Finally, he laughed. All right, shorty, give me a little something to get. He gave me a little something to get started. Before long, I worked my way up to BP. We'll call him BP. He was a handsome mid-level hustler who taught me how to use a gun, how to look out for myself, and later helped set me up at a spot in Cherry Hill where I could sell dope out the first floor apartment window. I was soon introduced to Chet, who was making his way to kingpin status and would eventually serve 10 years in the penitentiary. The first thing Chet taught me was how to be on the low, as in no flashy cars, jewelry, none of that. The second thing was to always have a legit job. The third, I needed a plan. Being fashionably, being fashionably late to sophomore year orientation for the theater department was my intention. Another way to make an entrance. We were required to report to the massive performing hall at Baltimore School for the Arts, an imposing room. It was memorable for its super high ceilings and a stage built from beautiful dark wood. As I sauntered in with my new extended rat tail down to my butt crack, I immediately catch eyes with the new dude across the room, who was engaged in a very energetic conversation with one of our classmates. He's wearing a thick old school alpaca sweater and jeans. He has beautiful brown eyes with big brown eyes. I'm sorry, big. He has beautiful brown skin with big brown eyes, heavy eyebrows, and a tiny peanut head. The minute I turn and notice him, he's already staring at me. Me catching his eyes gives him the gumption to walk across the room and come right to me. Boldly, he smiles a big old smile, showing off his big old teeth, and puts out his hand to shake mine. Hi, he says. I'm Tupac. I am struck by the power of that unusual name, Tupac. His smile will his smile will become an unforgettable feature, a million watts of white teeth, and his hands feel strikingly clammy, becoming an ongoing joke between us for the duration of our friendship. The power of his presence lets me know right away that he is something special. I'm Jada, I smile back. Nice to meet you, Tupac. Hi, Jada, he says. From the gate, Pac was an undeniable charismatic who could captivate any room, peanut head or not. He hadn't yet told me his story or that he was already making moves as a 15-year-old rapper to be the next Rakim, or that he has serious acting chops. But I will soon find out all of that and so much more. What I didn't expect, even with the uniqueness of his vibe, was that this young man and I will create a bond that will impact my life forever. Chaos in the midst of chaos isn't funny, but chaos in the midst of order is. Steve Martin. Many of us who were raised in environments of chaos as children became addicted to that chaos. These cycles of chaos will seem so normal that we won't recognize how we attract it and make consistent choices that keep us mired in disorder. For many of us, the trappings of chaos seem so familiar, so right, that we can't even recognize the warnings when they make a blaring appearance. Such cycles can mislead us into believing that the adrenaline, the roller coaster ride of emotions, the merry-go-round of pain, is living. The truth is, we can't tell up from down when we're on this kind of high, and when we're not, we're miserable. If we're lucky, we hit rock bottom, worn out from the chaotic drama, confusion, and danger we are inviting into our lives. We have a choice, but we must be patient. We have cultivated this way of life for a very, very long time, and for most, we can't change overnight. Sometimes, to create that change, it takes surveying the past and identifying the origins of our chaos in order to recognize it in our present circumstances and be willing to take personal responsibility for bringing the past forward. Is there any aspect of your life at the moment that reflects an addiction to chaos? Does part of your life feel unmanageable and out of control? Do you seek the thrill of the roller coaster? It can be so helpful to look at what keeps you hooked on chaos, perhaps as a way to make yourself feel strong and valued for your ability to withstand. When you're willing to name that cause, it loses its power and gives you back yours. Chapter 5. Advanced Degree. Alright, Pac, kiss me then. Pac and I are standing on my tiny back porch on Price Avenue, and the two of us are bantering about how maybe if we actually tried to be more than friends, could it work or not? And I decide to dare him. During our teen years, it wasn't really Pac's good looks that grabbed you, because his sculpted features and unforgettable handsomeness hadn't quite come in yet. What we did have, what he did have, even in 10th grade, was pure unadulterated charisma that was out of this world. What he saw in me at first might have been just that I was the cute, feisty girl in the room. For any curious male spirit, that's the first move, to want to know her name and see what's up. Basic. And yet, all I can tell you is that our immediate connection, I felt, rose beyond the basics. And this is what made me want to get to know him. We became inseparable from the moment we met. We were kindred spirits in so many ways, and although Pac may have had an attraction to me in the beginning, the more time spent the more time we spent together, the more we could both see that there was no romantic chemistry between us at all. There were no airs between us either. We could be raw and authentic without the constraints of having to impress each other. You got what you got. There were no butterflies, no tingles in the body, no hot desire to be in each other's embrace. Rather, there was something far more important unfolding between us, a friendship of a powerful strength, giving us the ability to hold space for each other through some of the most unbearable moments of our lives. Being as young as we were and as tight as we were, we both found it confusing at times that we weren't drawn to each other romantically. Hence today he got on my last nerve about the possibility of being more than friends, and I dared him to kiss me. Without hesitation, Pac grabbed me in his arms and did just that. The kiss lasted a few seconds before we both pulled away in mutual disgust. It felt wrong. Pac pulled back with his eyes all squinted as if he had drunk spoiled milk. He wiped his lips hard and said, "What the fuck?" I laughed my ass off. "See, I told you, dummy." It was literally like a sister and a brother trying to make out. All I knew, though, was that It was possible to really love a guy deeply without it having anything to do with sexual attraction. I had never felt that before. Pac made up for the lack of male protection and care I sought in my life. Unlike other guys who wanted to flash their jewelry, cars, cash as their value, because Pac didn't have any of those things to display as his worth. He offered his mind, his care, and attention. Besides, I think God knew that if sexual attraction had been possible between us, would have left each other in a special kind of ruin. Instead, God gifted us with a special kind of friendship. Now, our bond didn't come without its challenges and cost. We were both fiery, passionate, and dangerously stubborn. This made for feral fights. We didn't take each other's shit, and unfortunately, we also knew how to hurt each other like no other. Our tongues were the sharpest of swords between us. These fights could leave us not speaking for days, sometimes weeks at a time, but we always made it back. Always. But nobody could tease me like Pac. He knew how to get under my skin. He created a nickname to remind me that I wasn't as up on my game as I acted. It was brutal. He called me square for life. When I first met Pac, he owned one sweater, the same one he'd worn the day I met him, two pairs of pants, and a few shirts. That's all. Pac couldn't hide the reality of poverty in his life. Looking for an easier way of life, in part, his mom had bought him and his little sis, Sekiwa, from New York to Baltimore. But it didn't sound like their lives had gotten much easier for them. As Pac and I grew closer, I got a clearer picture and learned that, like my mother, his mother, Afeni struggled with addiction. Like mine, his environment was full of instability and chaos. We really bonded as a result of riding the same roller coaster with our moms, and both suffered the pains and disappointments that came with it. Unlike my mother, Afeni had not always been able to secure work, which had only worsened their financial struggles. Pac never said so, but I could tell that getting to eat 3 meals a day was not a given for him, nor were sure, nor were shoes that fit or getting a good night's sleep. Between my regular jobs and cash I started to make in the street, I always had some money in my pockets to help Pac. I made it my business to ensure he was straight, but not on some charity shit. Pac was prideful. He had standards about what it meant to be a man and stood his ground on that, in spite of how he may have been suffering. If he was made to feel like I thought he needed assistance, he would refuse support from me. And in those instances, my heart withered watching him do so. Early in our friendship, I bought some clothes to school that I bought him, some shirts and a jacket. But I had to be careful. As I started to show my purchase to him, I went, "Yo, Pac, Gap was having a sale, right?" So I was getting some stuff for myself, then I saw this fly ass jacket, and I couldn't help but see you in it. I was like, this would be fly as fuck on Pac. I held the jacket up against his chest. Damn, I was right. I remember the biggest smile came over his face as he grabbed the corners of the jacket. Yo, you're not such a square after all. This is dope. He threw on a khaki jacket with pride. I had succeeded. His sis had simply thought about him, that's all, and happened to run across some fly shit she wanted him to have. Anything different, he would have made an excuse not to take it. If I was going somewhere to eat, I'd take him with me on some less kicky shit with a casual flow. Whether it was TGIF to get a chicken box, cheesesteak subs, or McDonald's. We had late nights at Denny's and IHOP. Later on, when I started to really roll in the streets and was flush with cash, I even took Pac a few times when I went with my homegirl Fawn, Chat, and some other high rolling hustlers to full on upscale dinners at Pargo's, our spot after a good week. I'm talking about at least a couple of grand in my pocket. For the other players, it was a lot more. I didn't bring Pac around often because I didn't want to pull him into the dangers of the Baltimore dope scene. The game wasn't for you if you weren't from Baltimore and didn't have your people. I wasn't thorough like that to have him on my hip. Me, I could barely cover my own ass. On Greenmont Avenue, where Pac lived, the dude selling dope already saw him as a threat. A young black charismatic male that didn't know and didn't like. They didn't know and didn't like because he had an it factor that they didn't. Young lions can always smell the blood of other young lions in their territory who might present a problem. Pac didn't pay their foolishness any mind. He was focused on becoming known for his brazen rap battles. At 15 and 16, he could freestyle and rhyme you relentlessly into submission. We were each other's biggest fans, going crazy watching each other do what we loved. I loved watching him do rap battles, and he got a kick watching my dance battles. Then there came the inevitable moment when Pac tried to convince me, "You should rap. You be dope, Jada." I don't know, Pac. Come on, stop being a square. I'll write a rhyme for you. I couldn't refuse because Pac was so determined to have a female rap battle group. He put me and two other girls together and quickly arranged a rap battle for us. Pac wrote my rhyme and made me practice with him every day after school. I was horrible. Pac really tried, saying again and again, "Listen to me." And then he rhymed the rhyme for me. Can you imagine? Pac's cadence and style were as dynamic then as when the world got to hear him. And here he was trying to get me to rhyme like him. Please. He just thought my inability to do so was because I was being stubborn. Pac would be like, "What? Is that your great, great, great white grandma coming through now? Where's your rhythm? Is you listening to the guitars or something? Get on beat, Square." I could never find my cadence, but I went through with the battle and we won. I got out alive without embarrassing Pac too much, but my rap career ended there. Pac and I were thick as thieves, and we trusted each other completely, even confiding in each other about our love interests. Pac was seemingly falling in love with someone every week, although there was one girl in any given period of time that he was really crazy about. That was the one he couldn't get. He would have his eye on a few, but there was always that one ungettable girl who would take hold of his mind completely, at least for a time. And that was the one oops, who became my assignment. He sent me on missions to put in a good word for him or deliver letters and poems to that one elusive girl in class. On the flip side, when I had an aching crush on a senior, Pac agreed to help me out. John Cole was a visual artist at BSA who wasn't on campus often. Whenever I saw him, I had butterflies. I was so infatuated with him that instead of just introducing myself, I had asked two friends to make the introduction in a lunchroom one day. The moment John looked at me, it was as if his eyes pierced into my soul. He was emotionally open yet mysterious. He kept to himself and his art most of the time, and I could feel in him what seemed to be a soft but tortured heart. He was not my usual preference as far as masculine beauty goes. I like black dudes, street dudes to be correct, and John Cole was neither. The exact opposite. He was pale white with white blonde hair all over. Not yellow blonde, but white blonde. To some, he could have seemed damn near transparent. But in my eyes, he was beautifully handsome. His face and body seemed sculpted like one of those classic Greek statues. He was different, and I was captivated. This was new territory. I wanted Pac to get to know John for me, explaining, "He's different and I like that, but I want to make sure he's not on some weird out of pocket shit." As soon as I introduced Pac to John, the two of them fell into a tight friendship that made it natural for John and me to become romantic. It was unexpected, unforced, and epic. We became the Three Musketeers. The only thing I tried to keep separate was my street life, not wanting to involve either of them in what was still on a limited scale at this time. I didn't want my worlds to collide. We each had a level of dysfunction and trauma in our lives, but because Pac's life was so marred by poverty, I think he felt the stresses more. Pac stayed with his mom and his sweet baby sister, Sakiwa, whom he adored, with his own spot at the back of the house in a makeshift extension. One day I went to pick him up and he invited me inside. He took me to his room and I saw that he slept on a tattered mattress on the floor with the sheet thrown over it. The floor was covered by a super thick carpet that looked like it had never been vacuumed. Me, I could post up in many projects in Baltimore, but Pac's house, not so much. Pac's living space made the projects feel like the Four Seasons. He grabbed what he needed, gestured to the front of the house, and then took me to meet his mother. And there Afeni was, in the dark. As Pac led the way through the very still and heavy space, um, yeah, over time I would get to know Afeni and see that many of Tupac's traits were inherited from her. Afeni was brilliant, well learned, and when she had her mind set, there was no changing it. She had a smile that could light up a room. And when she started to speak about something she was passionate about, it was impossible for her not to get your attention. Pac was the same in every way. All of this shared magic would at times be the grounds for conflict between two very intelligent, strong willed spirits already steeped in their own individual conflicts. Ma, this my friend Jada from school, Pac said to Afeni, who sat quietly smoking as the embers of her cigarette lit up the darkness. Well, hello, Jada. Aren't you pretty? She said this without celebration. It's just a matter of fact. I don't know how to explain it, but I was immediately drawn to her rawness and her lack of desire to be impressed or to impress. Thank you. Very nice to meet you. You too, sweetheart. Afeni then turned her attention somewhere else, and I turned to go, following Pac out the house. After my first visit, I never went back to that house. John, on the other hand, stayed with Pac a couple times, until the rats got a little too close for comfort to the mattress on the floor of Pac's room. Before long, there came a point between the young dealers in my hood targeting him in conflict with his mother when Pac admitted he needed somewhere else to stay. I knew what I had to do and had Pac come with me and wait in the living room as I went to my mother's bedroom to beg. Ma, just let him stay here tonight. One night. Just one night? Yes, until we can figure something else out for him. My mother agreed to one night and not one night more. She thought it very inappropriate for a male friend of mine to be staying with us. I didn't care about what was appropriate. Pac wasn't going to be on the streets. Period. I got him some sheets and a blanket and he slept peacefully on our couch. The next day, Pac and I explained his situation to John, who instantly offered for Pac to come and stay with him. My anxiety drained from me in a flash. I knew with John, Pac was straight, and thus began a memorable period in each of our lives. John lived with his parents in Bolton Hill, a well-to-do area at the time, not far from school. John's parents loved both Pac and me, which granted us an open door to their home. Pac stayed weeks on end in the spacious upper loft John occupied, and in time, John's home became Pac's official residence. I'll forever be grateful to John's parents for allowing their home to be a safe space for us. The closer we became, the more John confided in me about his heartbreak, which had to do with the debilitating stroke his mom had suffered and how it had stolen from him the mother he once knew. Pac and I had lost our mothers to addiction. The three of us were all orphans in some manner. We had lost our mothers in different ways. We were codependent in the best way. We would try to fill in the gaps of one another's losses as much as we could. What the three of us were going through became the glue of our everlasting friendship. I have found a new garden. There was something so liberating about being with a young man as deeply passionate as John. He brought that passion to everything, from the music he was drawn to his desire to help others. Y'all, I am so sorry. My dog fell asleep and he's snoring, so I hope it's not too bad. Um, he brought this passion to everything from the music he was drawn to his desire to help others, to his art and how he loved. He was also passionate about sharing every aspect of life with Pac and me. He would sometimes go to Odell's with us on North Avenue and lay in the cut while I dance battle. He explained later that he rarely got to see me dance because I was always surrounded by a sea of people while he stood posted as the only white dude amid a sea of hustlers. He didn't care. He was down to kick it with Pac and me no matter where we were. Whenever I stepped off the staircase after climbing to John's loft sky, I felt free to be someone other than the Jada I knew. With its beautiful brick walls, high ceilings, and tall windows, his living space was a world full of deep feeling, art, music, and open-hearted conversation. I had my first mushroom experience with John, which was a hell of a ride after I damn near poisoned myself by taking too many. He was a seasoned enthusiast. In fact, much of his artwork was inspired by his shroom journeys. Pac in these days didn't indulge in any heavy mind-altering substances. He smoked weed now and then and drank alcohol once in a while, whereas I could be extreme. We all shared a love of every kind of music. John revolutionized our musical knowledge by introducing us to bands like New Order, This Mortal Coil, The Cure, the Cocteau Twins, Blue Nile, and Dead Can Dance. We all became huge Kate Bush fans, especially running up that hill. In our world together, no subject was taboo. Pac, fiery and eloquent, delivered political sermons to me and John, with particular attention to the plight of the Black community. It was in these impromptu forums that I learned about the Black Panther Party. His mother, Afeni, was an ex-Panther, and the teachers who shaped its ideology. Pac taught me so much history I had never known, and he spoke about how that history continued to influence the systematic abuse of power and efforts to destroy Black communities. In these moments, I saw a preview of how Pac could change the molecules in the air around him in ways the world would eventually experience through his music, his movies, his interviews, and above all, his presence. Through Pac, I became enthralled with freedom fighters like Angela Davis, Huey P. Newton, Geronimo Pratt, Assata Shakur, and Elaine Brown. He urged me to read Angela Davis, an autobiography, Soul on Ice by Eldridge Cleaver, Soledad Brother by George Jackson. Marion had given me a foundation in the history of the civil rights movement, but Pac embedded me in the history of Black power, which gave me insight into why my Aunt Karen and my mother approached social inequalities the way they did. Now it all made sense. In my own studies, I noted that there were still gaps in the thinking of both movements that held Black women back, because we were ultimately expected to propel Black men forward. Pac and I had many intense and powerful debates about sexism within the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement, and the ridiculousness of how Black men, in fighting for their freedom and autonomy, had a very difficult time believing their women deserved the same freedom and autonomy. This was always deeply disappointing to me, and Pac and I would go at it around this issue. Pac loved women, especially Black women, but he had his hangups. I could go as hard as he could, but was more willing to give up my need to be right when he hit me with some potent truths. I can't say Pac gave up his need to be right too easily, but man, I knew how to sit him down. We both cherished our intellectual and passionate exchanges. John was sometimes our audience and oftentimes our student. One day, John and I were out shopping in a store when I realized, and my newfound radical awareness around racism that a white female clerk had been eyeing me and covertly following me. "Are you following me?" I finally asked. "Excuse me?" I said, "Are you fucking following me?" John immediately ran to my side, smoothed things out, and took me outside the store. "Hey, what's going on?" he gently asked. "You didn't see how she was treating me? She was following me like I was gonna steal something. How come she didn't do that to you? Why do you think she was following you?" "Because I'm black, John." John listened silently, but with the deepest empathy. When I was done ranting, he said, "I get it. I'm sorry you experienced that, and I wish you didn't have to." I gotta go back a second, y'all. Don't let me find out. I mean, like she said, everybody got their hang-ups. But, and y'all know I love me some pop. And nobody's perfect. But he couldn't understand what she was saying with the black women. And anyway, y'all know what I'm talking about anyway. Um, Let me get back into the book because I was just stuck there for a second. When I was done ranting, he said, "I get it. I'm sorry you experienced that, and I wish you didn't have to." He was so kind. But what we both knew then was that he would never have such experiences. No matter how hard he tried to understand, I knew this would create a chasm between us. That made me question if I could truly consider white men as romantic partners. It was bad enough that most black men didn't understand the plight of black women, but to contend with a white man who wouldn't have the ability to get it no matter how hard he tried, which was worse? John could see beyond these things. He operated off spirit, which dissolved barriers and filled chasms. Things just were. I loved how he had the ability at such a young age. I did not. For the time being, however, I have found a measure of safety in the company of these two remarkable and gifted men, both who loved me in different ways. For myself. By the summer of 1987, aspects of my life were starting to crash into each other. The fact that I was starting to move from occasional low-level dealing to selling more often made it difficult to keep my world separate. John, who was very persistent, wanted to be with me in my different worlds. He wasn't intimidated or daunted, even as a striking, almost iridescent white dude in the middle of places where he had no business. His fearlessness made me uneasy. I bluntly told him more than once, "Listen, you can't go with me everywhere. I mean, you can't be up on me like that. I'm going to be in places you can't be." He didn't get it. He would just ignore what I said. John thought he could be Mr. United Nations and create a demilitarized zone anywhere he went. He felt comfortable and had no reason to see himself as a possible target. That wasn't going to work with me, especially after the night he dropped me off in his baby blue VW Bug, and some dude I knew stepped to him and asked for a ride somewhere with two buddies. John agreed. That was the night that almost got him killed. In an attempt to set John up and rob him, maybe because they thought John was carrying something for me, these dudes got in his car, pretended they needed a ride to a part of town he should have never been in. There was quite a saga that followed, but culminated at a red light with guns from another car pointed at John's passengers, who fled on foot. John took off in the nick of time, barely escaping with his life. Child, the worst part, he wasn't fazed at all. But I was extremely fazed, so much so I made sure some friends of mine had a word with the dude who started it. John almost got his ass in some shit because of me. Never again. The intersection of our worlds created too much risk. We decided to go our separate ways, but John and I would have a lifelong friendship. Outside of John and Pac, I had homegirls who were like sisters to me, yet Unlike a lot of female social sets, my girlfriends and I very rarely posseed up. We each had our own unique sisterhood. Each of my girlfriends represented different flows and offered me levels of connection to some things important that I needed. Tony, my skating partner, had just moved to Baltimore from New York when I met her at the rink. She was petite like me with a relaxed demeanor. It didn't hurt that she could skate her ass off, which made a perfect pairing for learning moves and showing out. None of my other girls' friends skated, while Tony and I couldn't get enough of it. We had many adventures and some misadventures too. One day at Painter's Mill, some rowdy, rough-ass chicks squared off on Tony as soon as she skated off the floor. Whatever instigated it, I didn't see. I was still skating, but with a minute or so, I caught the commotion. I peeped the scene quick, and I could tell by the stance of the girls coming at Tony that she was used to fighting boys. She had her right foot back and her left foot forward, hand down, clenched in fists, ready, inching toward Tony, and she talked shit. Girls who couldn't really fight would be swinging their fingers in somebody's face, shouting big words with their feet in a parallel stance. That was me for sure. I knew right then we were in trouble. On instinct, I took my skates off in the middle of the rink, ran across the floor, and jumped beside Tony with one skate in hand. These girls were about to whoop our asses, but not without a fight. Because I was so small, I didn't adhere to the rule of fair one. I held my skate tight by the wheels, ready to smash it against the side of that girl's face if she got stupid. Tony swung, and the girl did a quick lean back, missing a shot like a pro. The girl's reflexes was quick as hell, and just as she was about to lunge toward us, two male skate guards jumped in between us. I was so damn relieved. Scared as I was that day, the rule is, if we come together, your fight is my fight. My girl Fawn and I spent a lot of time together. Tall and pretty like her name, she was a bit older than I was and had the freedom to move with me however, whenever. She was super quiet and smooth. She didn't know nobody and didn't care. She was the girlfriend who probably knew the most about my drug activities at the time because I trusted her. She didn't ask questions. So if I got a page and said I got to make this stop real quick, she simply nodded and we rode. Fawn's home situation was plagued with addiction, like mine. Our loneliness and dismal family lives were often cured by each other's company. We both were basically able to come and go as we pleased, and Fawn was always down for whatever. And then there was Ramsey, who went to Baltimore School for the Arts in the Visual Arts department, half white and half Japanese. Ramsey's looks strongly favored her Japanese heritage from her paternal side. Being mixed race made for an interesting dynamic with her white family on her maternal side who raised her. She was orphaned too, in a way. Through Ramsey, I was able to witness the racism that Asian American women faced, very different from the racism I faced as a Black woman. What she experienced had difficult nuances and complexities, yet she was as challenged by white supremacy as I was. This was especially the case since she lived right across the street from some members of the KKK. Although we had to deal with all the external realities, Ramsey and I had so much fun together. Rams was super cute, and when she came to my neck of the woods, all the dudes loved her. She looked like your quintessential visual artist with her black turtleneck, black jeans, long black hair, and Capri cigarette in hand. Ramsey was another one who rode with me anywhere. I had her deep in my streets, and she had me deep in her streets, populated by poor white boys from Pigtown to Highlandtown. And that mix was a weird combination of punk, metal, hip hop, and drugs. They liked pills and acid. These dudes were in bands and were artists in their own right. Rams introduced me to the hardcore punk scene with bands I would see in the Loft, a hole in the wall club in her hood. It was full of some of the most gutter, rugged, rough white boys in the city had to offer. My homegirl Keisha, who also went to Baltimore School for the Arts, was one friend I couldn't take anywhere because she was a homebody, more or less by choice. Her mother, Geraldine, a dead ringer for Sade, and soon to be entrepreneur, a caregiver who would build a multi-million dollar business, placing other caregivers, worked as much as my mother did and had the same kind of hours. Keisha didn't like to be alone, so she would sneak her boyfriend in to stay the night with her almost every evening. Sometimes while I was hanging, I'd be inspired to color my hair with jazzing semi-permanent color over the top of my platinum blonde and use the bathroom sink, much to the displeasure of Geraldine, who kept the most immaculate house. Luckily, she put up with me ruining her beautiful towels. Being at home with Keisha was a safe place for me to decompress and be still. We known each other since middle school, and nobody could get through to me better than Keisha, who was deeply affectionate, loving, and just downright silly. Even when she was serious, Keisha had the brightest smile and the whitest, most perfect teeth. She was obsessed with dental hygiene, like nobody I ever knew. Although I loved hanging with Keisha, I loved being in the streets more, and summertime was the best time for that. Some of my fondest memories are of Fawn and me making our way to Druid Hill Park, one of the oldest public parks in America. There were gardens, waterfalls, and even a zoo where I used to go with my grandfather, Grant. But the main attraction in the park every Sunday was like a big old block party that started at high noon and went until dark. You could scope out the dopest cars in the city, driving by in the slowest moving train, and listening to the bangingest sound systems as joints like Paid in Full blasted with thumping bass. All us girls were looking fine as hell, and the dudes who were the biggest high rollers in the city always made an appearance. Every feature of a car was up for scrutiny at the event, down to the detail of how well your tires shone. Dashboards, steering wheels, and panels in a car had to be shining. Your car had to be just as fly on the inside as it was on the outside, even down to the tree air freshener that hung from the rear view, and black ice, vanilla, pine, strawberry. To this day, a crisp car that smells good is an aphrodisiac for me. Add to that smell of a man wearing Drakkar Noir. Don't get me started. How you laced your car was an art form, and it was also an indication of your come up for that week. The flyer your car became, the more money you were making. And it was also at the park where everyone following the unwritten rule that there was to be no violence of any kind. It was the only place and the only day when hustlers from all parts of the city could convene and socialize without issues. As soon as dark hit the park, the festivities moved to Northern Parkway in Wabash, where we watched the dopest motorcycles in the city race up and down. Sundays were fun days when the streets took a break from the madness. They were like the hustler's holy day. It was the cars, motorcycles, hairstyles, nails, bags, and jewelry. How much stuff you had and the quality of it that were the signs of worth for a community of people who were constantly reminded, you ain't shit and ain't never gonna be shit. Watching those cars roll through the park was an inspiration. They were a constant reminder that a prosperous life was possible and that we deserved the better things life had to offer. Those cars kept many of us hopeful. They may have not guided us to the right path, but they gave us something to reach for instead of giving up on ourselves. I kept all this in mind when I got my first car. Not the one I wanted because one, I could never explain to my mom how I could afford such a car, and two, I rode in this city at all hours with product and didn't want no smoke from the cops or worse, stick up crews. Drug money was not the only way to pay for a car though. By this point, I had already worked my first professional acting job, playing a runaway slave. The short PBS special entitled Freedom Station was about Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. In addition to being admitted to the local performers union, I earned about 6 grand. With that, I paid cash for my little Nissan Sentra with the patient understanding that if I played it smart now, one day I could have any car I wanted. In my Nissan, I was the last person you suspect of carrying a decent amount of product and pocket full of cash. With my blue or pink or green or platinum blonde hair, I was just the friendly artsy girl next door who went to Baltimore School for the Arts and who knew was one day maybe going to be an actor. The level of sophistication present in the East Coast drug game operating in black neighborhoods during the 1980s to the 90s has rarely been captured in film and TV. The violence of the landscape has been portrayed on screen, but never the intelligence and the ingenuity and the organized nature of it all. I'm not an expert, and it's a tricky subject to broach because it's actually nothing to brag about. Yet it was truly a unique era and has yet to be explored enough to show why. What's more, there are some of us in the entertainment world today who were schooled through that street game. We were given lessons that helped us achieve success legitimately and made it possible for us to survive different types of jungles. I came across dudes from New York, Philly, and DC who were real deal entrepreneurs and who first introduced me to stocks and the importance of investing money. Many of them owned multiple businesses, sub shops, barber shops, hair salons, body shops, and shoe stores. They were kingpin slash CEOs who knew to organize young lions, gain their loyalty, and keep them in check when necessary. I was lucky to come across a few big ballers who took a liking to me, who saw promise in my future beyond the streets, who helped to keep me safe, and who taught me a few things along the way. They showed me the importance of being self made and that nobody was going to give you your success. They taught me how to hold my own, and persevere to get mine. Because I was taught to always keep a legit job, my mother never became suspicious. Ironically, though, she didn't know about me. I was aware that she had her own stint selling cocaine in order to support her heroin addiction. The fact that mother and daughter were selling at the same time was indicative of the condition of our world. My legit jobs also, ironically, helped me make connects with all different kinds of hustlers. When I worked at Merry Go Round, they came through to the shop for themselves and the women in their lives. The men who were really about that life were confident, had nothing to prove, kept all things close to the chest, and carried an assured stillness that made them a walking secret. And then there were those who were wild, reckless, violent, and unpredictable. And although folks feared them, their days were always numbered. Arrogance, typical of the boastful ones, covered for how insecure they were. This type was always worried about themselves and would throw you under the bus quick. And believe it or not, there were many who had the sweetest heart behind the rugged exterior that shielded their wounds. Hustlers were everywhere. The skating rink, the clubs, the record store, clothing stores, my telemarketing job, a black family owned candy store at the Harbor Place Mall. All these jobs and the people I met in those settings just helped me cultivate my instincts and better read the inner working of others. Give me a second. I'm trying to see how many more pages in this chapter. Shit, at least a 10 more pages. So I think let me see, where was I? Who child? I love reading, y'all, but I'm trying not to make these videos too long. And yeah, definitely. You know what? I'm gonna end it here, and then I'm gonna do some more tonight or tomorrow. But yeah, so let me see. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all for coming through, hanging out, and I'll see y'all on the next one.